Climbing on a bike is tough at the best of times, let alone on a TT or triathlon bike. But over the years, we've learned various tips and tricks for going faster and making it easier getting up hills on one of these. But before we get to that, we would love your support. So we'd love it if you could give us a like, and if you're not yet subscribed to the channel, click on the globe and then you'll make sure you'll get all of our future videos. Right, better get on with this climb. So what is the main difference about a TT bike or a triathlon bike? Well, they're designed to be aerodynamic and go fast. And on the whole, that's designed for going fast on the flat. And you'll notice obviously quite a lot of differences between this and a road bike. The most significant one being these. These bikes are designed around riding on your aero bars. Now, with that in mind, you'll notice a different angle in the seat tube. And as a result, the relation of your body position compared to your cranks. You'll also quite often have base bars, which will naturally be a little bit lower. And all of that is going to be putting you, or at least making you feel like your weight is further forward on the bike. And let's not forget, these bikes can often, or are usually, that bit heavier. Now, the main feature of the Aero Bars, what can we do to climb faster in them? Well, the first thing you want to consider is what type of hill or what sort of hill have you got? Because if it is a short incline or a relatively gradual incline, then the longer you can stay in this position, the better. In fact, if you can keep yourself small and aerodynamic, you can hopefully use the momentum you've had going in to get you up and over that hill. But as the hill begins to increase in steepness or length, then there is a tipping point where the actual benefits you get from staying in the aero bars become negligible compared to the benefits you can actually get from being able to put more power out if you're sitting up in the saddle. Now, where that tipping point is a little debatable, but evidence shows that it's somewhere beneath 20 miles an hour. So the next question, standing or seated? Now, in theory, cycling in the saddle uses less of your body, therefore you can keep your heart rate lower and less energy expenditure. Whereas standing, well, you can put more power because you can put your body weight over each of the cranks. However, that's going to cost you more. So in theory, you only really want to stand up when you've got a steeper kick and you just need that little extra oomph. However, training on hills on your triathlon bike really is key, because the more you practice riding in the different positions and being able to swap smoothly between the two, the more efficient you'll be able to become at riding on hills. And you'll even find that as you get more used to riding out of the saddle and being able to transfer that body weight over each pedal, you might even find it becomes no more taxing than riding up a hill sat in the saddle. One of the biggest things you can do to make climbing easier and faster is to look at your gearing. Now, if you've got a race coming up, then check out the course profile, and if it's a hilly course, in particular if it's got some really short, steep hills, you might want to opt for an easier gear ratio. For example, you might want to increase the teeth on your rear cassette. So I've currently got a 30, I might opt to move up to a 32 just to give me a little bit more range and be able to keep my cadence high. Now, it's normally cheaper to be able to change your rear cassette, but some people do look at changing their front chain rings as well, and there you'll want to actually go smaller to make it easier. So we're looking at the gearing ratio. So the smaller you are on the chain ring at the front and the larger at the back, the easier the gears and the easier you'll find the climb. So with that in mind, you want to make sure you're in the right gear ahead of the climb. Changing gear too late once your cadence has already dropped and you're putting a huge amount of force through the cranks can end in disaster, or at least end in a significant loss of speed. So as you see a hill coming up, you want to start to change into the correct gear so you can keep your cadence as consistent as possible. And naturally, you'll find your cadence will drop slightly on a hill, but if it starts to drop significantly as you're going up, then you just need to change down again. When it comes to pacing, hills kind of complicate things. We're told that in a race or even on a ride, you want to try and keep everything as consistent as possible and avoiding spikes in power that can add fatigue to your legs. But when you reach a hill, no matter how hard you try to keep things consistent, you'll find that naturally your effort and your power output increases, and it's due to many factors, but the main one being to the fact that there's no dead spot in your pedal stroke. Now in triathlon, obviously, we want to try to cap that increase to a certain extent and recommend trying to keep your power within 10% more of what you'd be riding on the flat. And if you're not using a power meter, a heart rate monitor is a really good way to keep an eye on making sure your effort doesn't go too high on the uphills. Finally, I'd suggest considering your setup, and when you actually fit yourself to a triathlon bike, a lot of the emphasis is on these, the Aero Bars, because that's where you're hopefully going to spend the majority of your time, but you still want to actually consider your base bar height, because when you're climbing, that's where you're going to be having your hands, so you want to be comfortable in this position. And some people find that actually having your base bars that bit lower gives you a little bit more control or a bit more comfort when you're riding up a hill or when you're just naturally riding on them. And yes, that does mean that you might need to have more risers between your base bars and your Aero Bars, but it doesn't matter with what it looks like, it's how it feels. And at the end of the day, you've just got to be comfortable riding your bike. And on that note, it makes sense that if you know you've got a hilly bike course coming up, yeah, you're going to have to practice riding your TT bike on those hills. The more you do it, the more comfortable you'll be when it comes to the race. But hopefully this has helped prepare you to ride your TT bike on the hills, whether in training or racing. Good luck with that. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. Give us a like.